Welcome to Paths to Freedom, Day 12. Still trying to figure out the name. We'll get it right someday. Today, I wanted to expand on something that I've talked about yesterday, which is expectations and how they work in a person's life, how they set the tone for everything that happens in a person's life, in my life at least, and how I've started perceiving everything. So, as I tried explaining yesterday, I think that the biggest source of sadness in my life so far has been expectations. So, up until recently, I've really set up hard expectations on everything I did, or tried to do, or wanted for my life to be like, and for other people as well. So, I knew someone and I expected that they would do something, and when they didn't, I got frustrated. And I expected people to not like what I do, so I didn't even start trying. And just the things in my head, the world in my head, which I expected the world would be like, prevented me from enjoying the world for what it is like. So, for example, I was really scared that my parents and the friends around me would never support such a thing as quitting my job. Whereas, in fact, once I did get into gathering enough strength to do it, it turns out that they were pretty fine with it and actually wanted to support me. Because they saw that I'm passionate about it and I mean it seriously and that I have my reasons for it, which I cannot solve just by staying at work. At least that's how I see it. Anyway, it's been a real bummer for me that people really often stick to their expectations, and the fact that they act as if the world would be mad when in reality they haven't even tried it. So their expectations prevent them from actually trying something because they've decided that it will already fail because that's what they expect. So the good news is, just because you expect something to fail doesn't mean it has to. And just because you will fail 10 times and you expect people to hate you by then doesn't mean that they will. The fact that you keep trying is a really strong factor in people having that respect. Even if it's something they don't approve of, just the fact that you can have the patience and the persistence, I found, is really something that a lot of people have respect for. Even though they might not like it, they can respect it, which is much better than pandering to everyone around. So the basic gist is that the world around you is a whole other thing that what might be in your head. And at least in my case, once I got rid of all my expectations and started to enjoy stuff for how it happened instead of whether it happened as I expected or not, I enjoyed everything a lot more and found a way to enjoy things, even if originally they didn't really seem that good or that beneficial. So that's what I would encourage, at least. The new thing that I wanted to add to that is once you let go, or once I let go of my expectations, I found that it is much easier to be myself. I don't have to think about whether it will harm someone or please someone, or whether it is something they expect. So just letting go of expectations allowed me to not have to overthink. So I did a lot of overthinking, and I think even now, I overthink a lot, but it's helped significantly to just enjoy life as it is and say what I want to say. So instead of, again, pandering to other people, my own ideas of perfection, I just do it. Even if it's imperfect, I still leave it at that, because for the longest time I thought that a perfect thing that's never been done, that's just in my head, is much better than something that's finished but imperfect. So what I mean by that is, so long as it's in my head, it's perfect. And that's just the way I like it. Because once I would do something, it would no longer be what I had in mind that it should be, what I expected would happen. There's going to be flaws. There's going to be tons of flaws on every project that you might want to erase, or even might want to give up a project for. So what I mean by that is, I tried to paint, for example. I had an image in my mind, and even though some people thought it was pretty good, I didn't like it as much as I liked it when it was just in my head. And instead of just being happy that I did something, I wanted it to be perfect, so I just rather destroy the picture and keep it in my head as the perfect version. I've done that with so much shit. But the gist is, I've now realized that it's much better to do an imperfect thing and have it real instead of an imaginary perfect version, because it helps you improve. Because once, after a longer time, you figure out that everything's just in your head, there's not really that much in there. Whereas if you have something done, you can always reflect on it and say, okay, well, at least I learned something, I might have improved from it. And this perspective really helps in not regretting stuff, in not overthinking stuff, in not feeling like I'm misjudging all the time. Because even if I do, it feels like I can learn something from it. Because it's imperfect, and that's exactly why I made it. It doesn't come easy. For me, at least, it took months, probably. But now that I'm there, I can definitely recommend it. So I have a few things written down, and some of the benefits that I found once I really started enjoying being myself and realizing some of my weaknesses and just owning them. For example, I talk too much. I talk during other people's sentences. I interrupt them, which I have my reasons for. My opinion is that we're trying to communicate, and once I understand what they're trying to communicate, we can just move on. But that's for a whole other video. Once I realized those things and began to not be proud of them, but acknowledge them and realize that they're just something that's here to stay. I can improve on it somewhat, but it's definitely not going to be perfect. So once I was no longer embarrassed about it and no longer regretted doing it, because I'm still going to do it, I'm just going to regret it over and over and over again. Once that happened, I just didn't have to prove anything to myself that I can overcome these urges. I didn't feel like that. I didn't feel like I have to be embarrassed in front of myself. I don't have to hesitate if I should say that because other people will like me or not. Of course, it's a skill to know, at least to some degree, whether someone will really be ashamed or frustrated at what you say or be hurt by it even. But if it's not something that significant, I think saying something that doesn't make them happy is perfectly fine because it's your opinion. And in the long run, they learn that you can stand for your own opinions, which is a much more valuable thing for people to think about you than that they always share your opinion. Because, hint, hint, if people talk with each other, which they usually do, and they talk about you, and they don't share opinions, but you share opinions with both of them, they will realize it, and they will see you as a fraud, because you're sharing different opinions with different people, and that's just seen as pandering to people. In my opinion, at least, that's what I found out, and now that I am sticking to my principles, I can have a much more meaningful conversation instead of just avoiding the stuff that might be controversial. This is just a theory. I think it is much easier to predict someone on an instinctual level when you know what they think, when you know their principles and they're willing to stand by them. And just the fact that it's easier to predict what you're going to do in a certain situation makes you much more likable. People like to be able to predict, at least to some degree. Whereas if you're like a chameleon, if you change skins, I think it is much harder for people to get a good sense of you. And this is not something rational, but a lot of people will just avoid those people, those folks, those chameleons, let's say. That's how I see it. So yeah, being more trustworthy by sticking to your principles, being more empathetic as well, and just being a person that you can respect, even their weaknesses, let's say. So if you own your weaknesses, I think it's much easier to stand in front of the mirror and say that, okay, I can live with myself. Which I found myself a lot of times thinking that, what am I doing? Or who am I really? Because with 3 different groups of people, I had 3 different sets of opinions. Then I had to track with each group about what I'm saying, what I said last time. And you have to think. It's like a character that you put on. You have to actively think about what the character should do. Whereas if you're yourself, you don't have to do that. You can be yourself. And I think that's where the best part of people comes up to the surface, where they really can enjoy speaking their mind and saying whatever they think. So yeah, I just wanted to share that to elaborate on the thought of expectations versus reality. This is a bit of an extension, but I think it still falls under it. It hasn't been easy to formulate these thoughts, but I think I will try to do this more in the future, just to be able to not hesitate every 3 or 4 words, not to stop and think. Yeah, it's still a weird thing to let these thoughts out like that. So consider the next few days my personal diary. If you're interested in reading more, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.